When you hit the PlayStation button, it brings up the Control Center, but if you want a shortcut that takes you back to the PS5's main home screen directly, then do a long press on the PlayStation button instead. Let's say you're on the home screen and you want to navigate to the search, settings, or profile icons in the top right. Instead of scrolling up and right, simply hit triangle. It puts the cursor in the top right corner right away. Get used to this shortcut and it will make things so much easier. Even better, it works when you're browsing the PlayStation Store or the PlayStation Plus catalog as well. When you have the Control Center opened, hit Options on any setting and it will let you customize it to your liking. You can rearrange the icons or remove ones that you don't find yourself using too much, and on the flip side, some settings are hidden by default, so you can add things like voice controls or accessibility settings. Your DualSense controller has a shortcut for muting all audio coming from the console. Simply do a long press on the mute microphone button and all audio will go quiet. Also, you'll notice that when this is on, the amber light will pulsate to indicate it's muting all audio, rather than a solid glow it normally does for muting your mic input. Another very simple shortcut that was on PS4 still works for PS5, and that's holding down the PlayStation button for 10 seconds to turn off the controller. Another handy shortcut is double tapping the PlayStation button. This will bring up the most relevant activity card for what you're doing on the console. So when you're playing a game, that might be the card for the current level you're playing, allowing you to easily access tracking information or PlayStation Plus game help if a game supports that. However, if you're in a voice chat or using Spotify, that card will take priority. So again, double tap the PlayStation button to quickly access voice chat or music settings. On the PS5's home screen, you can hit Options on a game and toggle the setting Keep in Home. This will ensure that game never leaves your home screen after playing other titles in the meantime. Could be useful for something you're always going back to, but still tend to bounce around other games. You can pin up to 5 games to keep in home. If you head to your profile and tap over to Games, you can finally get a breakdown of all the stuff you've been playing with trophy progress, but the really cool thing about this is you can also see your total playtime for those games. Not only PS5 stuff, but PS4 games as well, so you can finally see just how much time you put into PS4 titles. It goes back pretty far too. If you want to eject a disc from the home screen, you can hit Options on any icon. It doesn't have to be the exact game that's inserted. In fact, it's a little quicker when doing this on the PS Store or PS Plus icons. Eject disc will be the first and only option right away. If you just got your PS5 and you're coming from a PS4, then definitely open your game library and take a look at the Your Collection tab. A lot of developers have been offering dual entitlement for their games, meaning you have PS5 versions of games you already bought. The easiest way to see this is if the game has a PS4 and PS5 label. Select it and download your PS5 version. Sometimes though the PS5 version is released later and it's considered a free upgrade, in which case you have to manually insert your PS4 disc or find the game in your library to then claim your free PS5 version. If you want to know what games have free upgrades, I'll leave a link below to Push Square, which has a guide on all the free PS5 upgrades available right now and what enhancements they have. Something really important to know is that if you have a TV or monitor which can go up to a 120Hz refresh rate, then you'll want to make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1 compliant cable, which your PS5 comes with. So don't ignore or throw away that cable and use ones you already have unless you know they're using the latest HDMI specifications. If you're interested in getting PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium, there's a way to get these a little bit cheaper. If you can find an older PS Plus 12-month card for less than $60, which is the MSRP here in the US, then buy that at the discounted price, and then on the console pay the prorate fee to upgrade to Extra or Premium. That fee will assume you paid MSRP when you didn't, locking in some additional savings. This would still work too if you're able to get standard PSN cards for less than the rated value for whatever you want on the store, including Extra or Premium, since PS Plus cards are seemingly being phased out. Also, if you've just gotten your PS5 and you're a PS Plus member, don't forget to 1. Claim your PS Plus collection games. These are excellent PS4 games that are only available for Plus members on PS5, and they act like the monthly games in that once you claim them, they're always on your account, so if you unsubscribe and resubscribe later, they're still there. And then 2, you can easily access PS4 cloud saves if you didn't transfer them manually or forgot to. Download these to the console so you can continue where you left off on your PS4 games. If you have some local couch co-op PS4 games but only one DualSense controller, then it's worth knowing you can use your old DualShock 4s on PS5. The only catch is they can only be used for PS4 games, so in this case, it's best to use them for that. If you haven't tried it yet, SharePlay is a really interesting feature for both PS5 and PS4. You can use this feature while you're in a party, and you have the option of sharing your screen with a party member. Or if you're a PS Plus member, you can let someone remotely control and play your game even if they don't own it themselves. And perhaps the coolest thing is, you can have someone play with you when they don't own the game. Even if it's a couch co-op game that doesn't support online multiplayer, you invite them from the SharePlay card, and then the other person will start streaming it on their end, where they can join and start playing with you. This works with most titles too. One feature that isn't explicitly advertised anywhere is file playback from an external storage device. PS5 can still do this like PS4, so make sure your USB device is formatted as exFAT or FAT32, and for music you'll want to make a folder titled Music and place that at the top of the drive's directory. Place your music files there. Once connected to PS5, you can access these from the music settings in the Control Center. PS5 supports FLAC, MP3, and AAC files. For video files, just make sure they're in a folder at the top of the drive's directory. The name doesn't matter, and those will then appear in the Media Gallery app. If you turn on your PS5 with a DualSense controller, it will always boot up on the Game tab first, showing you all your installed titles. But if you have a PS5 Media Remote, booting the console up with that will always take you right to the Media tab. One tip I could not recommend enough is getting an external drive and using that for all your PS4 games. When it comes to console storage, you only get 667 gigabytes of internal SSD storage on a 1TB PS5, and you need that for PS5 games. So picking up an external HDD or SSD for PS4 games is great because they'll play right off of those with boosted performance. If you opt for the SSD, they'll actually load a little faster too. But when you do this, make sure you adjust your storage settings so that anytime you install a PS4 game, it installs on the external storage. Also, if you don't like unsightly cords or drives sticking out of the console, I'm right there with you. Use one of the rear USBs. When my PS5 is horizontal, I tuck the SSD underneath the console next to the stand. Another benefit to external drives is that if you do happen to have too many PS5 games, then you can still use external drives as cold storage, meaning you can't play PS5 games off them, but you can move them there for the time being. The benefit being it's much faster to copy them back and forth instead of deleting and reinstalling. In fact, it'll take much longer for digital-only games where you might have a slow download speed. But let's say you still want more storage for playing PS5 games. That's where internal M.2 SSDs come in. Sony lets you use any third-party SSD as long as 1, it's fast enough, 2, has a heatsink, and 3, can comfortably fit inside the expansion bay. So my tip here is shop around and see what prices you can find. I'll leave some recommended drives down in the description along with a thorough walkthrough on how to install one of these, but generally speaking you have options to find a price you're comfortable with. So definitely avoid branded PS5 SSDs. You can pay far less going with something else. Even more if you're willing to install your own heatsink, which is not hard to do at all. Here's some more storage tips. When looking at the console storage, you can reduce how much is being used by the media gallery if you don't care too much about game captures. Deleting these regularly is recommended, but your PS5 also saves screenshots and videos whenever you're earning trophies. You can adjust this by going to Settings, Capture and Broadcasts, Auto Captures, and Trophies. You can either turn this off completely or adjust it on a per trophy basis between screenshots and videos. And while this feature isn't used much, you can back out and also adjust challenges so there's no auto captures here as well. Another way to save space is hitting options on a game and selecting Manage Game Content. Some titles let you delete certain parts of the game, like single player or multiplayer modes, and this is also the option you would use if a game supports more languages, as you can download them from here. With the PlayStation mobile app, you can remotely manage your storage if you have your console linked and it's in rest mode. Tap the storage icon in the top right underneath the Friends icon. From here you can see everything installed on your PS5, between internal storage, an M.2 drive, and external storage. Really handy if you want to download something remotely from the app, but you don't have space for it. Speaking of the mobile app, you can also remotely launch games from here. Even if your PS5 is in rest mode, it will boot up and launch the game as far as it can go before needing to connect a controller. You can also see there's the option to initiate remote play. This is basically a shortcut because while it does redirect you to the remote play app, it will automatically connect and launch that game right away. Another cool mobile app feature is accessing your game captures. First, on PS5, go to Settings, Capture and Broadcasts, and under Captures, enable Auto Upload. Anytime you make a manual capture, so this would exclude the auto-captured trophy videos, they'll be available to view from the mobile app, where it's also much easier to share them from. PlayStation 5 technically does not have a consumer-facing web browser application that you're meant to use like a PS4 or a PS3, but it does still have a browser that can occasionally be brought up in settings. To make better use of this, simply send someone a message with the website link that you want to visit. A search engine is usually best since you can't change the web address once the browser is opened, but this is an easy way to use the browser if you want, especially because you can look something up or even play a video, and then using the Options button you can pin the browser to the side of the screen. Then you can continue playing your games normally. This works much better than you think. You can double tap the PS button to go back to the browser in this trimmed down view, and then hit square to resize it, do whatever you need to do, resize it again, double tap, and go back to your game. Let's take a look at some settings you might want to adjust if you didn't know. Under Save Data and Game App Settings, you can set your game presets. These are settings you commonly find in most games, like subtitles, difficulty, or performance modes. You can pick your preferences for these so that when you start a new game, these are selected automatically. It might not work for every game, but definitely worth setting your preferences ahead of time. In the same menu, check out Spoiler Warnings. If you play a lot of story-driven single-player games, you might want to turn this on. That way, no matter where you are on the console, you'll get a spoiler label on the content if you haven't gotten to it yet in that game. This only applies to PS5 titles, and spoiler content is determined by the game's developer. In audio settings, you'll want to set your audio preferences right away. One of the cool things about the DualSense controller, for example, is that you can use it as a mic, but the problem is this might be turned on by default without you knowing. So you can set it to where every time you log in, the controller's microphone is muted automatically. Or you can change it so that the microphone will mute only when entering a voice chat or broadcast. One PS5 feature you might have heard a lot about is 3D audio, and there's a few things you should know about this. First, there's 3D audio for regular TV speakers and headphones. For TV speakers, simply turn this on under Sound Settings, but you'll also want to measure your room's acoustics. After doing this, apply your measurement and then select Listen and Compare. That way you can see if there's a noticeable difference between basic stereo or 3D audio. For headphone 3D audio, the most important thing to remember is you can use any headphones for this. It does not have to be from Sony or anything like that. Next, select a 3D audio profile that sounds the most realistic to you. You can play around with these adjustments and find the one that sounds good, and then do another direct comparison to see if the difference is noticeable. One really important sound setting you might need under audio output is mono audio for headphones. If you have any kind of hearing impairments, you can have the same audio play from both sides of the headphones. Also might be useful if you simply want to play with one earbud in or something. You might have also noticed in sound settings that if you're not using TV speakers or headphones, then there's a much more robust offering of settings here that PS4 did not have. You can select the HDMI device your sound is coming from, and you can specify your AV amplifier's channels with the speaker positions too. Finally, another sound setting you might want to change under audio output is home screen music and sound effects. If you've never enjoyed the tones or songs that play on PlayStation home screens, here's where you can turn those off. For screen and video settings, this is where you'll find a lot of useful stuff like 1440p, 120Hz, variable refresh rate, things like that, which if your display supports them, then by all means, this is where you can turn those on. But some settings to keep in mind is your 4K video transfer rate. If you had problems with a PS4 Pro and screen flickering, you might want to try adjusting this to -1 or -2 and see if that fixes it on PS5. Also, if you have a newer TV, toggling ALLM off, auto low latency mode, that might be useful if you're looking to utilize your TV's features like black frame insertion. Some TVs have their settings grayed out if ALLM is on with PS5. Another round of settings you'll want to set and forget is notifications. You have a precise amount of control on which ones you want and when you want them displayed. A really good one to adjust though is wishlist updates. Make sure this is on because whenever you're browsing the PlayStation Store and wishlisting a bunch of games, you'll be notified about when they're finally on sale. But also, you'll be notified if any of those games are added to the PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium Games catalog. By the way, if you're picking up a few games during a PlayStation Store sale, there's a screen you can see right before checkout that shows you your total savings. Just tap down on the D-pad and you'll see an exact dollar amount if you're curious. While this might be an unlikely situation, there is a way to pair DualSense or DualShock 4 controller if you don't have the correct cable on hand, or maybe the only one you have is broke and you have to wait to get a new one. There is a way around this. You can use an existing controller that's already paired and head to Accessory Settings. Under General and Bluetooth Accessories, this is where you pair a new device wirelessly. For both a DualSense and DualShock 4, hold the PS button and share button down so it goes into search mode. Then with the other controller, you can sync it that way. If you have nothing paired to the console, then you can still accomplish this with a USB keyboard or even Remote Play. As for Remote Play itself, you can use a DualSense for this on desktop or mobile, but the cool thing is the DualSense features still work as intended like on PS5, so you get full haptic feedback and adaptive trigger support. It's worth noting though, when using Remote Play on iOS, haptic feedback is disabled, likely to avoid any reverberation effect if you've got a phone mount. If you're in a territory where you have the Explore icon on your home screen, you can control what kind of ads or news items appear here. This is based on games you own or have played, so hit the Follow to Games icon in the top right, and here you can manually unfollow all the games you don't want to hear about. It's well known at this point that the PS5's covers can be removed and swapped out with a different color of your choice, but even if you're not interested in doing that, it's still worth removing your covers every so often for general cleaning and upkeep. That's the big benefit to having these be so easy to take off. So if you tend to have a lot of dust in your home, or pets with a lot of fur, do some cleaning every 6 months to a year. You can even get direct access to the fan without doing any sort of complex, in-depth disassembly. Hopefully you don't ever have to use this, but if you do have a disc-based PS5, there's a way to remove a disc manually in the event that your console dies, doesn't turn on, something like that. On the side where the disk drive is located, there is a black sticker. Puncture this and use a flat-headed screwdriver turning clockwise to slowly eject the disc. If you enjoy going for trophies, then there's a few things worth knowing for the trophy card above the control center. This is where you can quickly reference the full list, but if you need to periodically check just a few trophies, hit square on that trophy to pin it. You can pin up to 5 trophies so that they'll appear at the top of the list. Another option you can see on this card when you hit Options is choosing to reveal all hidden trophies. Select this so that all hidden trophies stay revealed, even if you close the card and continue playing. This is set on a per game basis too, so there's no worry about other games having their lists revealed. One final tip for trophies in case you didn't know about this on PS4, because it does work there, is that if you have a game with 0 trophies earned, you can delete that trophy list by hitting Options on it. That's the only way you can delete a trophy list, is if you didn't earn anything on that game. If you have the first generation PlayStation VR, then you can use this on PS5, but there's a caveat here. You need to get a camera adapter for the PS5, as it will need to use the original PS4 camera. This adapter is completely free though. Just head to Sony's site, I'll leave this link down below, and you can request an adapter by providing the serial number of your current headset. When playing a classic PS1 or PSP game on your PS5, you can use the DualSense touchpad to swipe across the rewind timeline instead of manually cycling through them with the D-pad. This works with the PS4 and the DualShock 4 as well. Another trick with the rewind feature is that whenever you bring up the classics menu, that creates a new rewind point. So if you find yourself needing to rewind often on a particular part of a game, make sure you hit Options at the exact moment where you want to restart from. So depending on how long your attempt is at whatever you're doing, you'll only have to rewind to the most recent snapshot to go back exactly where you want. Here's another useful thing to remember if you're playing the classic games. Under accessibility settings, you can remap the controller buttons however you want. I say this for classic games because many of those older PS1 titles might have bizarre control schemes that just don't hold up by modern standards, so don't forget you can tweak those on a system level. One example I found useful is fixing Ape Escape's camera controls, moving them from the D-pad to the L2 and R2 buttons instead. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found this useful, and like I mentioned throughout, there's going to be more links in the description for getting more out of your PS5, and that's basically it. So if you haven't just yet, please consider subscribing for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates that are here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan, and that is it. I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.